The Elbe appears suddenly, a silver ribbon catching the light of the sinking sun and throwing it back like a great mirror. You lean back, holding your breath as the train carries you closer to this moment, and all you see is water and light united in a wonder of the evening hour. The sun isn't high in the sky anymore. It approaches the horizon with a slowness that feels both urgent and endless. The light is no longer white or yellow like at midday. It's become something quite different. It's orange and red and violet, a spectrum you can't express in words, only in feeling. The sky burns in a gentle way, not like a fire that consumes, but like the glow of something slowly going out, releasing all its light in the process. The Elbe below mirrors this burning sky, and for a moment you can't tell where the air ends and the water begins. Everything is light, diffuse and golden and impossibly beautiful. The banks of the Elbe have grown dark, silhouettes against this brightness. There are small houses, patches of forest, perhaps a boat, but they're all reduced to their bare form, to their outlines. Depth has vanished. There are only 2 dimensions left in this scene, and they're filled with color and light. It's like another planet, another reality where the normal laws don't apply. The water is no longer water, but liquid gold, and you find yourself in a dream your waking mind can barely process. Somewhere across the Elbe, you can just make it out. A ferry moves slowly over the water. But it's not gray and technical as ferries should be. In this light, it's become a sort of moving legend, something mythological, as though an ancient goddess herself were crossing this river. There's a moment when the ferry floats directly into the sunlight, and it looks as though it's made of light itself, as though it's no longer a ship of metal and wood, but an embodied vision of an idea older than human memory. The movement of the water is gentle, barely visible, but it's there, a slight wave pattern that breaks up and reassembles the reflection of the sunlight. It's as though the sun itself were breathing, expanding its reflection and drawing it back together again, a silent breath. You find yourself breathing in the same rhythm, as though your body has synchronized with this moment, as though you're part of this scene, not just an observer, but also a participant in this silent wonder. Every movement of the water is a request for attention, and you give it. Every light is a call, and your heart answers. You and the Elbe, you're not separate in this moment. You're one, united in this silent ecstasy of evening light. The train rolls on, but the speed doesn't concern you. You're completely present, completely here, in this moment where the Elbe and the sky and the sinking light show you that there are moments that exist outside of time. The mist over the water grows slowly thicker, takes on the colors of the light and throws them back at you. It's atmospheric, mystical, a borderline between day and night, between reality and dream. The light grows more slanted, almost horizontal now, and because of this, deep shadows form on the far side of the Elbe. Trees that were only dark before now show their structure, their individual trunks stand out against the burning light behind them. The contrast is so intense that it hurts to look at, but it's a beautiful pain, a pain that keeps you awake in this moment, that shows you that you're still alive, that your eyes still work, that your heart still beats. These extremes of light and dark are the very essence of life itself, and you see it now with a clarity that's overwhelming. You try to understand what you see, the layers of light, the depths of color, the mathematics of reflection, but your mind gives up. Better to simply see, simply be, simply allow this image to penetrate into your innermost self and become something you'll carry with you forever. The Elbe flows on, has been flowing for thousands of years, will continue to do so long after, and you're a tiny observer of this eternal stream, blessed with this glimpse of its beauty. There's something divine in this moment, something that goes beyond words. The sun gives the water its last light, gives away its life to create this beauty, and the water accepts this blessing, carries it with itself, reflects it in all directions. It's an act of mutual love, this dance between sun and water, and you're allowed to witness it. This is what life means, not possession or success or security, but these moments of pure beauty where everything else becomes unimportant and only breathing matters. The colors intensify, grow deeper. The orange becomes a deeper red, the red becomes a purple, and finally it seems as though the world takes on a different color, a color that hovers between red and violet, beyond normal perception. The sun is now very close to the horizon, and its light seems to become more horizontal, as though it were traveling along the river like an invisible hand caressing the water. There's no violence in this scene, only a gentle tenderness, a caress of nature to itself. The water itself seems grateful for this tenderness. Its surface is hardly visible now, dissolved into light and color. There are no more waves, or perhaps all the waves have become a single great wave, a surge of light and color carrying you with it. The Elbe has transformed itself into a dream, and this dream is your dream now too. You no longer see the river. You are the river, and the sun shines on you, breaks apart in you, flows through you like a cosmic bloodstream. The other colors in the sky come forward, a delicate blue above where the sun hasn't reached yet, a green light on the far bank filtered through the trees. Every color is present, every nuance, and yet they all work together in a harmony that the human mind normally can't grasp. It's as though nature were granting you a moment of grace, a glimpse into her inner music, the eternal melody from which everything is made. You think of all the sunsets you've seen in your life, but none was like this one. Or perhaps they were all like this, and you just didn't perceive them. Perhaps you passed by too quickly, too preoccupied with your thoughts, too caught up in your own worries. But now that you're sitting in this train and can do nothing but watch, you understand that this was what you've been living for these moments when the world shows itself in all its beauty, without filter, without mediation, pure and untouched. Your eyelids grow heavy, not from tiredness, but from a kind of fulfillment. You've seen everything there is to see today. Everything else would just be repetition. The Elbe still gleams beneath you. The light still grows darker, and you drift off, your consciousness floating somewhere between the water and the sky. The boundaries between you and the scene dissolve. You're no longer the man on the train. You're the light. You're the color. You're the sun watching itself as it sets. The water carries you away, gently and unconsciously, into a sleep deeper than the Elbe itself. The colors fade, but inside you they continue to shine, golden and warm. Your head sinks against the window, and the last thing you see is a golden shimmer on the water that grows ever slower, ever sweeter, ever more distant, until it disappears completely and only darkness remains, a warm, peaceful darkness that wraps you completely. And as the train continued on through the night, ta-dum, ta-dum, I felt my thoughts grow slower, felt the images in my head grow softer, felt the edges blur. The voices I had heard became a gentle humming, a humming like distant bees, or like an old song you heard as a child and can't quite remember now. The warm air in the compartment settled around me like a blanket, and I felt my shoulders slowly drop, felt the tension of the day fall away from me, piece by piece, like leaves falling from a tree, without hurry, without sorrow. You're on the train from Thorant to Freital, and beside you sits a woman with scratches on her arms and splinters in her hair. She smells of bark and resin. She smiles and tells you about her trees. I climb trees. That's my work. I'm a researcher, a tree researcher, and I study the old beeches here in Saxony, the thick, large, 100-year-old trees. Some are even older. I have to get up into their crowns, collect data, check their health. That's why I climb. With ropes, with climbing equipment, like a worker on a high-rise, except my high-rise is alive and breathing and moves in the wind.
The old beaches are fascinating. A beach can live 400-500 years. That's longer than the United States has existed. The tree I studied last week was at least 300 years old. The trunk, so thick you can't get your arms around it. Gray, cracked, covered in lichens. A whole ecosystem on the bark. Mosses, lichens, little spider webs. It's like a city on the tree bark. The climbing itself is physically demanding. I have to attach the ropes, put on the climbing equipment, work my way up. The first 3-4 meters are difficult. The bark is smooth, the branches are far away. But then you reach the crown, and that's it, that's the moment. Suddenly you're right in it, among the branches, in the green leaves. The air changes, the smell changes. It's like stepping into another world. The large branches of beeches, they're like bridges. They're thick, solid, reliable. I anchor myself to them and then work. I measure the bark thickness, I collect leaves, I count new shoots, I check for rot or disease. The beech is a proud tree. It gives nothing up easily. It fights against disease, against pests. I see its wounds. I understand its struggles. In summer, at the height of 30-40 meters, the climate is different from below. The air is cooler, fresher. The humidity is different. And the view, you can look everywhere. You see other trees, you see the forest edge. You might even see fields further away. The perspective changes everything. The problems below become small. You realize that your life, with all its worries, that it's very small compared to this great forest, to these great trees. The fruit of the beech, the beech nuts, they grow up in the crown. They're small, 3-sided nuts, protected by a spiny casing. Some years there are many, some years almost none. That's called a mast year, when a tree puts a lot of energy into fruit production. In summer, when the beech nuts grow, when they become larger from tiny green balls, I can observe that, can document it. That matters for ecology. When the beech nuts ripen, then the animals feed, squirrels, birds, and that way they spread the seeds. The spider webs hanging in the branches, they're also indicators of forest health. Some spiders prefer a specific microclimate, certain humidity. When I'm up there and see the spiders decrease, fewer webs hanging, that's a sign of trouble. It could mean insect shortage, drought, disease. I photograph everything, I document everything. My data helps other scientists understand what's happening to the forests. The leaves of an old beech are beautiful. In summer, they're dark green, smooth, elegant. They're oval with fine veins. If you hold a leaf up to the light, you see the fine structures, the whole architecture of the leaf. That's not random. That's millions of years of evolution. The perfect design to use the sun to make photosynthesis happen. I collect leaves, I dry them, I analyze them in the lab. Through the leaves, I can read the tree's health. The insects in the tree crowns, they're like a small world. There are hundreds of species, beetles, butterflies, spiders, wasps. Some are pests. The beech leaf wasp, for instance, it eats the leaves. Others are beneficial. It's a complex system. When I'm up there, when I have time, I observe the insects, I document them. That helps other researchers understand how the tree works. The beetles especially interest me. There are beetles that bore into the wood, that leave tunnels. I can examine these tunnels, can understand how long the beetle was there, how much damage it made. It's like detective work. You read the traces, you tell the tree's story. The trunk of an old beech is like an archive. The growth rings tell the tree's story. A wide ring means a good year, plenty of water, plenty of sun. A narrow ring means a bad year, drought perhaps. I sometimes bore small cores from the tree. It doesn't hurt the tree. Then I count the rings. I read the story. This beech has lived through hundreds of years. The Napoleonic Wars, the Industrial Revolution, the 2 world wars. All of that is stored in the wood.
Climbing has also taught me to overcome fear. At first, I was terrified. The height, the movement of the tree in the wind, the feeling that you might fall. But with time, with experience, fear becomes focus. You trust your equipment, you trust your abilities, and then it becomes meditative. The climbing becomes flow, you and the tree together.
The summer sun, when it shines on the tree crown, that changes everything. The temperature in the crown is sometimes 10 degrees higher than on the ground. Your body sweats, your hands get wet. That's a problem when climbing. Wet hands aren't safe. So I eat salty snacks, I drink lots of water, I try to manage the temperature differences. And I always start very early, before the sun gets too strong. 7, 8 in the morning. The sun isn't brutal yet. The air is cooler. The tree gives me its secrets more readily. There are particular times of day when climbing is safest. Early morning, when the air is still, when it's cool, your body functions better. The equipment is safer. The material doesn't expand so much in heat. And the tree itself, it seems to have more energy early morning. I can't explain how, but that's my intuition as a climber. The tree and I, we're in sync early morning. The descent, abseiling, that matters too. You have to come down slowly, controlled. You can't just drop. I abseil centimeter by centimeter, and as I descend, I say goodbye to the tree. I thank it, yes, I thank it, for showing me everything, for bringing me safely to its secrets. That's important, the respect, the gratitude. And then when I'm down, when I'm standing on solid earth again, I feel that something in me has changed. The time I spent in the tree crown, it didn't pass normally. It was slower, more intense. The world from up there is so different, so peaceful, so quiet. The sounds from up there are only wind and leaves and birds. No cars, no people. Just life. The green, breathing life. And you're part of it for a few hours. And then the tiredness settles in. Your arms are heavy. Your thoughts grow blurred. And you want only to sleep in this tree dream. My eyes grew heavy. So heavy, as if someone had gently placed a warm hand on my eyelids and said, "Now it's good. Now it's enough for today." And I heard the train, ta-dum, ta-dum, and I heard the quiet breathing of another passenger already asleep, and I heard the distant rush of wind at the window panes, and all these sounds were like a soft blanket laid over me, layer upon layer, warmth upon warmth, until I felt nothing except the gentle glide of the train through the night. And somewhere in this dark landscape, I still thought, other people are sleeping now in their beds, in their homes, and the moon looks down on them, and the moon looks down on us, and everything is in its place. The fields are in their place, the forests are in their place, the rivers are in their place, and I am in my place, here in this carriage, here in this warm cradle of wood and cloth and metal that carries me where I need to go, without me being awake, without me having to do anything except trust and rest. You're on the train from Freudenstadt to Alpiersbach, and beside you sits a woman whose eyes are perfectly calm and clear. She smells of green, of earth, of peace. She looks at you and smiles. I lead people into the forest so they can breathe. That's my work. I teach forest bathing. It's a Japanese practice they call Shinrin-yoku. That means to take the forest's breath. Breathe in the air, breathe in the forest scents. Not jogging, not walking briskly. Slowly, very slowly, with all your senses. That's the art. Most people, they rush through life. They rush through the forest. I bring them to stillness,
to feeling.
Summer's the best time. The forests here are thick and green. The temperature is pleasant, not too hot in certain places. I choose my routes carefully. I need a forest that's open, not too much undergrowth, not too dense. I need paths that are easy to walk without distraction. And I need special places, a stream perhaps, a clearing, a very old tree. The places that speak when you listen with your whole heart. When a group comes to me, when I first see them, I can see immediately how tense they are. Their shoulders are up, their eyes are everywhere, their mind is racing. That's normal. The modern world does that to us. But then, after 20 minutes in my forest, then I see the change. The shoulders fall, the eyes relax, the mind slows. That's forest bathing. That's the magic. The phytoncides. Those are essential oils that trees emit, especially this forest with all its spruces and firs. They have a chemical structure that calms our nervous system. This isn't magic, it's science, it's biochemistry. When you inhale these oils, when they enter your lungs, your body responds. Your blood pressure drops, your cortisol, the stress hormone, drops, your heart rate slows, your immune system becomes more active. It's real, it's measurable. I teach people to breathe slowly, very slowly. 4 seconds in, hold for 4 seconds, 4 seconds out. That synchronizes your body with nature. That's very important. When you breathe like that, when you slow the tempo, then your mind becomes still. All the thoughts, yesterday, tomorrow, they vanish. You're only present, now, here, in this moment. I also teach people how to look. You don't see, you observe. It's a difference. You look at a tree, and instead of just registering it, instead of moving on, you stop. You look at the bark. How rough is it? What colors does it have? Gray, brown, even green from lichens. You look at the branches. How do they divide? The pattern structure is infinitely complex and infinitely beautiful. You see that for the first time, perhaps. Your whole life you've seen trees, but you've never really looked. And then there's the smelling. The forest smells, always. But which sense? I teach people to smell, really smell. Not just the general forest smell, but the individual layers. The damp earth, that's petrichor if it's just rained. The moss, mild, almost sweet. The rotting wood, earthy and deep. The bark, different for each tree type. The firs, sharp and fresh. The spruces, similar but subtly different. People are surprised that the forest is so polyphonic in scent. They believe a forest always smells the same, but no, each place has its own scent signature. The forest sounds. They're also part of the healing. The wind in the leaves. Each tree makes a different sound. A spruce, it makes a fine, high rustling. A beech, it makes a deeper, fuller sound. The bird songs, different every day. In June, the birds sing less. They already have nests with babies. But still, it's a gentle symphony. And then the insects. Sometimes you hear the humming when you're perfectly still. Altogether, that's a meditation. That's music that heals your heart. I have a special place where I take people, an old beech wood. The trees are so old, so large. The air there is more humid, the temperature cooler. There's a stream that runs very close by. The water is crystal clear. You can see the stones beneath. When people sit there, when they hold their hands in the water, I often see them begin to weep, not from sadness, but from relief, from joy. The forest opens something in them. Touch is also important. I teach people to touch the trees, gently, respectfully, to feel the bark, to sense the moss, to hold the leaves. That's not just sensory, it's energetic too. When you touch a tree, when you touch this great, living, breathing organism, something remembers inside you.
You are also nature. You're not separate. You belong here. There are also people with forest anxiety. They're rare, but they exist. The forest is large, it's wild, it's uncomfortable. The forest frightens them. But I work with them. We go slowly. I explain the forest. I show them the forest isn't dangerous. The forest is old and wise. The forest wants no fear. After a few weeks, the people who were afraid before, they suddenly love the forest. They see that the fear was unfounded. It's beautiful to experience that. My favorite group is older people. They understand more quickly what it's about. They've already lived so much, had so much stress. They're grateful for the slowness, for the quiet. Their breathing becomes deeper, their eyes become softer. Sometimes they have small injuries, a stiff back, knee pain. I find gentle paths, give them breaks. And at the end of the tour, they're transformed. They're younger, glowing. The forest has touched them. In July, when the air is densest with phytoncides, when the forest scents are strongest, that's the best time. The trees give the most. The forest is at its highest power. I plan my tours then. I want people to feel this power. I want them to know they're not alone, that they're part of something larger. The forest is an organism. We're all part of it. The trees, the animals, the people, everything together. There are also therapeutic effects I see again and again. People with depression, they become lighter here. People with anxiety disorders, the fear becomes smaller. People with sleep problems, they sleep better after the tours. I'm not a doctor, but I see the healing. I know the forest works. Perhaps it's the combination of everything. The phytoncides, the movement, the breathing, the presence, the beauty. The forest is a holistic remedy. It heals not just the body, it heals the soul too. And when I'm alone in the forest myself, when I have my own time for forest bathing, I simply stand still. I breathe. I feel the earth beneath my feet. I feel the damp air in my lungs. I feel how my heart slows, how my mind becomes still. The forest and I, we are one. No separation any longer. No thoughts, no worries. Just the green light through the leaves, just the rush of air, just the silence, the healing, wonderful silence. And everything becomes sleep. Everything becomes dream. Everything becomes rest. And somewhere in this dark landscape, I still thought, other people are sleeping now, in their beds, in their homes, and the moon looks down on them. And the moon looks down on us. And everything is in its place. The fields are in their place. The forests are in their place. The rivers are in their place. And I am in my place, here in this carriage, here in this warm cradle of wood and cloth and metal that carries me where I need to go, without me being awake, without me having to do anything except trust and rest. I met the bookseller on a train from Heidelberg to Basel, on a November evening when the rain was so fine it barely fell, but rather hung in the air like a curtain of silver. The city lights reflected in the wet cobbles, and the Neckar gleamed dark beneath the old bridge, and everything looked like a page from a very old, very beautiful book that someone had left in the rain. She was a woman in her late 60s, with a reading pair of spectacles perched on the tip of her nose and eyes so alert and curious that she seemed to read everything around her, not just books, but faces, landscapes, the air itself. Her hair was gray and full and fell over her shoulders, and she wore a loose jumper that smelled of paper and lavender, and her fingers bore ink stains she no longer washed off because they belonged to her like the freckles on her hands. Beside her, on the seat,
were 2 cardboard boxes crammed with books. Old books. I could smell them. That unmistakable scent of old paper and glue and leather and time, which is so warm and so comforting that some people become addicted to it. She noticed my look and said, "Auctioned. In Mannheim. 17 books, 18th century. Most of them still unread. Imagine, 300 years old and never read." She had an antiquarian bookshop in Heidelberg. In a narrow alley behind the university, she told me, in a house as old as some of my books. 3 stories, from the cellar to the roof, all filled with books. On the walls, on the floor, on the stairs, on chairs and tables and windowsills. 30,000 books, I counted once. 30,000 stories. 30,000 voices. 30,000 worlds in a single house. "Some people come in and are overwhelmed," she said. "They stand there and don't know where to look. And then I say, 'Tell me what you're looking for.' And usually they say, 'I don't know. I'm not looking for anything in particular.' And those," she said, smiling, "are my favorite customers. The ones who aren't looking for anything in particular. Because for them, I always find the right thing." She told me how she brings books and readers together. "It's a kind of instinct," she said. "I look at a person and I see not what they want to read, but what they need to read. That's a difference, you see. A real difference." A man comes in, businesslike, impatient, checking his watch, wanting to buy a gift, quickly, anything. And I give him a book about clouds, about cloud formations. An old book with hand-colored plates where a 19th century meteorologist described every cloud formation, every shade, every mood of the sky. And the man looks at me, bewildered, and then he opens the book and leafs through it and stops checking his watch. And after 10 minutes he says, "I'll take it. For myself. Not as a gift. For myself." She told me what books mean to her. A book, she said, is a time machine. Not in the science fiction sense, but really. You open a book that someone wrote 300 years ago, and suddenly you're there, in his mind, in his world. You see what he saw. You think what he thought. You feel what he felt. And the marvelous thing is, it works. Across centuries. The words are old. The paper is yellow. The ink has faded. But the thoughts live. They're as alive as the day they were written down. That's the miracle of books. They preserve life. Not bodies, not faces, but thoughts. And thoughts are what matter. I asked her what she'd learned in all these years, among her 30,000 books. And she took one of the books from the box, a small book, bound in leather with gilt edges, and held it to her nose and breathed deeply, eyes closed, as though smelling a flower. And then she said, "Every book waits for the right reader. Some books wait 100 years, 200, 300. They sit on the shelf and wait, patiently, without complaint. And then, one day, someone comes in, takes the book in their hand, opens it, and something happens. A spark, a connection, a moment when reader and book recognize each other. And then the waiting wasn't in vain. Then every day the book sat on the shelf was a day of preparation for this one moment, for this single meeting. Because nothing is chance. No book finds its reader by chance, and no reader finds their book by chance. She stepped out in Basel, took her 2 boxes, one under each arm, and walked into the rain, light and content, as though she weren't carrying 30 kilos of old books, but 30 kilos of happiness. And I watched her go, and imagined her tomorrow in her shop, 30,000 books around her, waiting for the next reader, for the next spark. Every book waits for the right reader. I think of that when I grow impatient, when I feel the world has forgotten me. Then I remember the book that sat on a shelf for 300 years, and waited, and was found. The train travels on, and the rain whispers on the roof like pages being turned, quietly, slowly, one after the other. And my eyes grow heavy, and the words blur. The thoughts grow softer, and I sink into a story, my own, which has no beginning and no end. Only this gentle turning of pages and the silence between them. There he sits now, this man, staring out the window as if Hamburg's about to drift past instead of the other way round. 15 years away, you understand, and now he's heading to Kiel to see his mother, and I can see it in him. He doesn't quite trust the whole thing. His hands are rough, but the nails are clean. The way he holds the briefcase tells me that's not a work suit anymore. That's something better, more expensive. His jacket's good cloth, but it doesn't sit as though he's at home in it. He fidgets with it, adjusts it, and then gives up. The fussing. I know that gesture. It's the gesture of someone who's forgotten who he is, trying to squeeze back into an old costume that no longer fits. The coffee in his hands, long gone cold. I can tell by the color. He drinks it anyway, small sips, as if he's killing time until Kiel, or perhaps until he has enough courage to step off this train again. The cup isn't his, something from the station cafe, with a rim where his lip needn't have been. It's so quiet here at the back of the compartment, just the rattle of the wheels, and his breathing's rhythmic, almost meditative, as if the train itself is his anchor in time. Sometimes he presses his forehead to the glass, and you see the fine lines in his face, not just from aging, but from thinking hard. I know that look. It's the look of people asking themselves whether distance has preserved love or destroyed it, whether the years have built a bridge or a wall between the person you were and who you are now. He hasn't told me anything, didn't need to. The story's written in his back. The way he makes himself small, though he's tall, as if he doesn't want to take up too much space in this home he's just returning to. His mother probably long wondered if he'd come at all. And now he sits here, just 2 hours from her, and I think he's a little afraid that everything's different, that she's older, that the house might be smaller than he remembers, that she might not explain, just look at him and wait for him to explain the gap. His gaze snags on the green meadows whizzing past, spring landscape, lush and young, but somehow that unsettles him. Perhaps because everything's suddenly alive when you yourself have felt nothing for so long. Nature has no patience with human timelines. It simply keeps growing whether you're there or not. His lips move, no words, just an inner murmur, an echo of something he keeps telling himself. Apologies, perhaps, or promises. It could also just be his own name, whispered to himself so he'll believe he's still the same person. The coffee grows colder still. He sets the cup down on the small table between our seats, and I see his hand tremble very slightly.
Not from fear exactly, but from the effort of holding himself together. A hand that spent years doing other things quite steadily, holding tools, carrying responsibility on foreign continents. And now that hand sits here trembling because it's going home and doesn't know if it's too late or if there's still time. A corner of a photograph pokes from his jacket sleeve, bent and old, where his nails have scratched at it, pulled out again and again, tucked back in without really meaning to. I could swear it shows a woman and a child, but I say nothing. Sometimes it helps not to know. His eyes close now very slowly, as if it's been decided for him, and I see his reflection in the window pane. A man looking through his own phantom at the landscape rushing past. His breathing becomes slower. That's the first sign. His head nods very gently to one side, and his chin almost brushes his chest. The tension in his shoulders eases a little, not completely, but enough that I see he's giving in. He's letting go. For the first time today, perhaps for the first time since he boarded this train. The train will carry him to Kiel, and perhaps that's all he needed. Someone simply sitting there, not asking, not judging, just staying and moving through the quiet rattle of time. His legs brush against the travel bag, which he positions crosswise, not like someone staying, but like someone ready to leave. Still, even after all these years, even now when he's finally traveling, the habit of leaving, of fleeing, of not quite arriving clings to him. Perhaps that's what makes the return so difficult. Perhaps he never really left, only the distance has become different. And that's much worse than a clean break. The space between people is sometimes worse than all the kilometers in the world. He wears a gold ring on his left hand, worn thin and faded, like it's been worn for many years. I hadn't noticed it before. Now, with his hand relaxed, it lies there in his drowsiness like evidence.
Evidence of what? Of love? Of connection? Of a story he told or was told? I don't know. But that ring tells me he wasn't simply away, that he stayed connected somehow, even if it was only a memory, a symbol holding at his hand what his body had to let go. I watch his head tip to the side, slowly, unconsciously, as if the train's rocking him like a mother rocks her child. His mouth opens very slightly, not for snoring, but for breathing, for letting go. And in this moment, I see the boy he was, before the years washed him away. The boy who maybe only ever wanted to leave, but not so far that love couldn't reach. Perhaps that was the mistake, not the leaving, but not understanding that love needs no boundaries, only faithfulness. And perhaps he forgot to give that. But now he's heading back to her, and that tells me he remembers. That love didn't die just because the distance grew too great. Hamburg's long behind us. We're driving now through smaller towns, villages with church spires pointing into the sky like unanswered questions. The train rushes past, and he sleeps now, his face relaxed like a child's, but his hands remain clenched. That tells me everything. In sleep, we can't hide our fears. They show themselves in our hands, in the tension between our shoulder blades, in the way we breathe. He's not really with me, but not really gone either. He hovers somewhere between, in that moment between being and not being. And I think that's the best moment to understand who we really are. Between the fields and the new houses sprouting from the earth like mushrooms, we travel. We're together in this moment, two strangers in a train, and the only connection is that we both understand that sometimes it takes years to walk 10 minutes. The landscape flies past, and it's still spring, still hopeful, and his face in the window, it looks younger now when it's relaxed. A man finally coming home, even if the word home perhaps still doesn't fit quite right. But it hurts less than before, I can feel that. And that's enough. Sleep now, my friend. You'll need your strength for tomorrow, for the door, for her eyes when she opens it. The trains always keep going, and time heals, they say. And perhaps that's true. My eyes grew heavy, so heavy, as if someone had gently placed a warm hand on my eyelids and said, "Now it's good. Now it's enough for today." And I heard the train, ta-dum, ta-dum, and I heard the quiet breathing of another passenger already asleep. And I heard the distant rush of wind at the window panes. And all these sounds were like a soft blanket laid over me, layer upon layer, warmth upon warmth, until I felt nothing except the gentle glide of the train through the night. You look at her, and all you see is the fear. But not the sort of fear that makes any noise. It's the quiet kind, the kind that gets into your bones and wears you down from the inside. She's on the Jena to Leipzig run, and in her rucksack sits everything that 4 years have meant, everything that matters. Her notebooks is stacked perfectly, color upon color, yellow, green, blue, pink. The system is flawless, but all that order can't hide the fact that her hands are trembling. She runs her fingers over one of those spines again and again, as though she's trying to absorb the words within them through her skin. It's barely an hour's journey to Leipzig, but for her it might be the longest train ride of her life. The exam sits in this compartment with you, under the seat, in the window, everywhere. Her hair is still wet from a shower, I'd say, the last ritual before everything becomes real. She's wearing a dress, not because it's spring, but because she believes dresses might give her strength. Perhaps her mother told her that once. It's dark blue, creased from the journey, but that hardly matters because it's the voice that counts, not how it looks. Though I think she believes that everyone can read every wrinkle, that each crease whispers, "This one's nervous, this one won't make it." She's holding 2 coffees in one hand and can't drink either one. One is for her, the other is, well, it's a substitute for something that might calm her but mustn't. The cup is still warm, but she can't afford to let hot liquid into her stomach. The body becomes a casualty of this sort of fear, and no amount of calories will change that. Instead, she stares at the cup, and I watch her make little mental calculations. How much time is left? How many pages? How much more can she revise before Leipzig? The abacus in her head is working, but it's working wrong because fear distorts all the numbers. The compartment is nearly empty, which is good and bad all at once. Good because she's alone with her fear. Bad because there's nothing to distract her. She has to sit with herself and the silence and the rhythmic clacking of the wheels, saying, "Yes, yes, yes, time goes on, yes, yes, yes," and you can't stop it. She masks the trembling by rearranging her notebooks over and over, but it doesn't help. You can't file away fear like that. I ask her very quietly if she's nervous, just to see what happens. She looks up, surprised that someone's speaking to her, and then her face opens. It's a young face, but now it looks as though it's carrying 100 years behind it. "Yes," she says, and the word drops like a stone into a well. "It's the final exam. After that, I'm done." After that. The word hangs in the air like a promise she's making to herself. After that, it's all over. After that, she can finally breathe. I watch her flip through her materials again, but she's not really reading. These are just touches, confirmations that the knowledge is still there, pressed into her memory, bound up in colors and categories. It's there. It's always been there. But fear whispers to her, what if it isn't enough? What if you forget it the moment you sit down in front of the examiner and your mind just goes blank? She's asked herself that question 100 times, and 100 times she's answered that it won't happen. But the 101st time, she doesn't believe it anymore. Her bag is packed like an expedition. Pens, pencils, a sharpener, an eraser, 3 different writing implements, water, nuts. She's thought of everything that can be thought of, but there's one thing you can't plan for. That moment when you have to walk through the door,
when it closes behind you and suddenly there's just you and the questions, just you and the knowledge you have or haven't got. She gazes out of the window and I watch her shoulders drop just slightly. The green landscape rolling past seems to settle her a little. It's spring, everything's new, everything's growing, and perhaps she's thinking, if nature can do it, if a seed can simply fall into earth and trust that something will grow from it, can I do that too? Can I just walk in and trust that everything I know will come pouring out? She tells me, quite suddenly, that she couldn't sleep last night. Not from fear exactly, but from something she calls, how does she put it, overripeness. The knowledge sits in her like an apple in summer, ripe and ready, but also fragile because if you don't harvest it now, it'll fall and rot. I understand that. Night is the worst time for someone like her. You just sit there thinking, and the thoughts grow and grow. And the bigger they get, the more they lose their shape. And without shape, they're just fear.
Another passenger gets on, an older man with a newspaper. She flinches as though his presence might reveal some awful truth, as though someone who isn't living inside her exam anxiety would instantly see how desperate she is. But he doesn't even look at her. He sits down, unfolds his paper, and for him it's just an ordinary moment. For her, it's an intrusion. She seems to shrink a little more, breathing a little less. Fear becomes more concrete when other people are around because you can't just fool yourself anymore. You have to fool the whole world. I notice she's biting her nails, a tell I hadn't seen before because her hands were busy with the notebooks. Now that she's still, the smaller gestures show themselves. The nails are already short, bitten down sharply. She didn't start that today. Weeks, months maybe. It's a habit fear builds. I want to ask if she's been eating properly, if she's looking after herself, but I know it won't help. People preparing for exams don't eat well. They simply don't. The body becomes a sideshow in the theater of their own preparation. The train passes through a forest, dense green, then the landscape opens out again to fields. We've been going for about 15 minutes now, and Leipzig is drawing closer minute by minute. I watch her realize that we really are moving, that time hasn't stopped. This is the moment when denial can't hold any longer. The exam isn't sometime, isn't tomorrow, isn't the day after. The exam is today. The exam is in just a few minutes when she steps off this train. Real fear settles down beside her, and I see her trying to make peace with it. She pulls a glass of water from her bag, water in some special flask designed to keep it hot or cold, who knows. The flask is green, and that detail tells me everything. She is prepared. She's thought of everything. But preparation doesn't protect you against fear. Preparation is just another word for control, and control is just fear looking for structure. She takes a slow sip, and I watch her trying to calm herself from the inside. Perhaps the stomach can be reasoned with in a way the mind can't. I see her hand relax, just slightly, but it's there. She moves the coffee cups away and leans her head against the window. "I think I'll rest for a bit," she whispers, and I nod because that's exactly right. This train, this moment between Jena and Leipzig, between fear and hope, it's the best place to sleep. Here you can let yourself fall and trust that someone will catch you. The train rolls on, ta-dum, and her breathing grows steadier, steadier, and my own eyes grow heavy too, and the fields outside blur into a green ribbon that we slip through slowly, ever more slowly, ta-dum. My eyes grew heavy, so very heavy, as though someone had gently placed a warm hand on my eyelids and whispered, "That's enough now. That's enough for today." And I heard the train, ta-dum, and I heard the quiet breathing of another traveler who'd already fallen asleep, and I heard the distant wind rushing past the windows, and all these sounds were like a soft blanket being laid over me, layer upon layer, warmth upon warmth.
until I felt nothing but the steady glide of the train through the night. The grandfather sits with the child in his arm, and the child has been asleep for some time now, head resting on the old man's shoulder like it's an island. The train rushes from Linz to Salzburg, and we're all together in this capsule of night, and nobody speaks, and that's just as it should be. The boy, or is it a girl? I can't quite say because children at that age still share so many similarities. The boy is wearing pajamas under his jacket. I can tell because his sleeve has ridden up, which means they came straight from home into the train, half their life still in the bedroom. The grandfather has taken the child into his arms and carried him into the night, into the train, into this moment. The child didn't ask any questions. That's trust. That's how love works when it's time to sleep. The old man smells of pipe tobacco. Though there's none in his lips right now, I can smell it in the weave of his waistcoat. And underneath that, he smells of something warm, something familiar, something the child knows. That's the smell of safety. The hand holding the child is gnarled and ancient, but it's gentle. I watch it open and close so softly, in rhythm with the child's breathing, as though that hand were the child's heart, beating outside his chest to keep them both in time. It's automatic, I know that. These things don't happen on purpose. The body knows what to do when it's lived long enough in love. The grandfather doesn't look at the child. That's the beautiful thing about it. He gazes out the window into the night, and his face is calm. But I know he doesn't see what's out there. He's looking inward. Perhaps he's seeing his own child, the mother of this boy, when she was small, just as trusting, just as light as a dream. Time becomes a circle when you grow old. I've learned that, sitting with people like this on trains. A circle is the most beautiful of all shapes because it has no end. There's always a way back, always a way to begin again at the start. The boy speaks sometimes in his sleep. Small words, incomplete, the names of things he sees in his dreams. "Yes," he says without waking. And the grandfather doesn't answer, but his hand tightens just slightly. That's enough. That's the whole conversation people like them need. His suitcase sits below, an old one covered in labels. Paris, Venice, something from Switzerland. The child has probably never seen that world, the one the suitcase comes from. But the grandfather carries them all in that suitcase with him. All those lives, all those places. And now he's taking the boy into those memories with him. The train is like a gateway between times. The child's jumper is too big, hand-knitted, perhaps by his grandmother herself, and it looks as though he's swimming in it. Little gloves dangle from a cord threaded through the sleeves, and I remember my own grandmother did that, afraid I'd lose them. Love expresses itself in such practical gestures. The child will probably never know it, but he'll feel it all his life long. The moon is shining on their faces now, on the smooth, unmarked face of the child, and on the deep network of lines in the old man's face. And they're both beautiful in this light. The grandfather, with his gray hair combed back, probably tended to in some morning ritual, and the child, with his small hands, still twitching sometimes in sleep from some dream. There isn't much resemblance between them. The child probably has genes from another branch, from the grandmother or the mother. But there's a resemblance that isn't written in genetics. It's in the way they are together. The grandfather and the child. They're together in a way that needs no words. They're together like two notes striking the same frequency. The train rushes through Linz, and I see the city lights slip past. The grandfather doesn't even look. He's elsewhere, and the child is elsewhere too, and the two elsewheres are the same place. The most important thing I've learned from all these nights on trains is this. There are moments when time simply stops. Not really stops, but it feels that way. And in those moments, people are closest to one another. I imagine what the grandfather is thinking. Perhaps he's thinking of nothing at all. Perhaps his head is as empty as the sky beyond the window, and that too is a form of richness. The elderly can do that, I think. They can simply be without thinking. They've thought enough in their lives, they've planned enough. Now it's time to sit and feel that the child is there, that life has continued over these decades, that he isn't alone. The boy still has that baby smell, even though he might be 5 or 6 years old already. That sweet tenderness that probably won't last much longer.
Soon he'll smell like playground sweat and burnt things from outside. But right now, in this night, on this train, he still smells like a new beginning. The grandfather knows that. He knew those smells a long time ago. And that's perhaps why he brought the child along, to remember that there are such things as new beginnings, even at this late hour of life. The child's breathing becomes slower. I watch his stomach rise and fall, with the regularity of clockwork. And the grandfather, his breathing synchronizes with the child's. It's not intentional. It's simply what happens when you sit together long enough. You become one. You become a single rhythm. The light from the window falls on the child's face, and I see a small tear, already dry, probably from earlier, from some dream, some lingering fear before sleep. But now the tear is dry, and the fear is gone. The grandfather wiped it away, I'd say, long before we stepped onto this train. His name, the grandfather's name, I don't know it. It doesn't matter. He's simply the one who sits there holding the boy in his arms. He's simply the one who understands that all that matters is the breathing and the closeness and the hand that holds firm in the night. I see no strain in his face. That's what real love does. It doesn't strain. It's simply there, like gravity, like air, like everything that's natural. His watch is old, a mechanical one, and I hear it ticking when the train quiets for a second. Tick, tick, tick. The heartbeat of time. And both of them, grandfather and child, are bound into this rhythm. They're not just traveling to Salzburg. They're traveling into what it means to be together, into the deepest meaning of it. They're traveling into a truth you can't speak, only live. Sleep on, you two. The train will carry you to Salzburg and beyond. The night is long, and there's plenty of room for dreams. And I'm here, and I'll make sure everything comes out right. Everything will be all right, I promise you. And so we traveled on, the train and I, and the few other passengers who shared the compartment with me, or sat in those nearby, each in his own small corner of the world, each making his own way into sleep. The warmth of the carriage, the soft crackling of the heating, the clacking of wheels on the switches, all of it became a single song, a song without words, a song that carries you and calms you and whispers, "You can let go now. You can rest now. The train is moving for you. Time is moving for you. The world is sorting itself out whilst you sleep." The train rolled gently on, and outside now the world was completely dark. Just a few lights in the distance, solitary windows where other people too were settling to rest. I thought about how many people in that moment all over the world were falling asleep, each in their bed, in their compartment, in their room, and how we were all part of a great, quiet movement, a movement into sleep. The rhythm of the wheels on the rails, ta-dum, 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 was like the breathing of some great, friendly creature carrying us all together through the darkness, through time. She has a sketchbook, and that's almost always a good sign. People who draw, they're somehow further away from fear. They've got a channel, a direct wire to something bigger than themselves. On the run from Zurich to Lucerne on this spring day, she sits in the compartment sketching, and I'm already looking forward to seeing what will emerge. Her hands aren't unmarked. I see that straight away. There are stains of graphite, charcoal, paint, little scars from knife cuts. These are the hands of someone who works, not the hands of someone who draws for art's sake. These are the hands of someone who draws because it's the only thing that says who she is. The drawing isn't a hobby. The drawing is religion. She looks out the window, not to relax, but to see. There's a difference. Some people look out windows because they've nothing else to do. This woman looks because she's hungry. She looks as though she wants to devour the landscape with her eyes. And then she looks away and draws. What she'll draw, I can't say for certain, but I know it won't be the landscape itself. It will be something the landscape has done to her. It will be an emotion that's taken the shape of trees and hills. Her sketchbook is old, the pages are worn, and there are water stains and mud on the cover. That's a good sketchbook, which means she's drawn in it a great deal. She's traveled far. The book isn't new, and that's a sign of serious intent. That tells you she's really a draftswoman, not someone who's thinking of taking it up. The beginning was a long time ago. She's wearing a scarf round her neck, not for warmth, it's spring and warm enough, but because it belongs there. The scarf is colorful, orange and red and green, and it's delicate as spider silk. She's put on the scarf because it feels right. That's how aesthetic people are. They can't just throw on any old clothes. The clothes have to sing. This scarf sings. Her eyes are dark, and they follow the pencil moving across the paper. The pencil makes small movements, not wild, but controlled. That's the mark of a good draftswoman. The control runs so deep that it's invisible. It looks like spontaneity, but it's decades of practice. I watch her, and I'm silent, because it would be disrespectful to interrupt. Drawing is a conversation between the hand and the paper, and I'm only a witness. She pauses sometimes and looks at the paper as though it's surprised her, as though she's thinking, "Did I do that? Is that me?" That's the mark of a true artist. She doesn't quite know what's going to come out. She trusts the pencil, trusts the hand, trusts something deeper than knowledge. It's instinct. It's truth. It's what the train draws out of me every evening when I sit with people like this. She takes a different pencil, thin, black, for the details I can see. The first layer was graphite, and now comes the second layer, the definition. It's like everything in life. First roughness, then precision. First possibility, then reality. She knows what she's doing. She's done it 1,000 times. But she does it as though it's the first time. That's another mark of a great artist, the combination of confidence and wonder. I finally see what she's drawing. It's a window, but not just any window. It's the window of the train. She's drawing the train she's sitting in. That's a kind of magic. She sits in the window and draws the window. It's self-reflexive, but in a beautiful way. It's not narcissism. It's a sort of thank you to the place she's sitting. That's why I think artists are such good observers. They take places seriously. They take journeys seriously. They take life seriously. And because they do, they see things other people miss. The paper isn't cheap, I can tell that. It's thick and high quality, and it must have cost quite a bit. This is an investment in herself. This is someone saying, "I'm important enough to have good materials." Most people don't say that to themselves. Most people think quality is only for others, for people who are more successful, more beautiful, who earn more. But this woman, she knows that a drawing can only be as good as the paper it sits on. She understands that you have to give yourself quality in order to produce quality. In her rucksack, I can see other sketchbooks, at least 5 of them stacked. That means she's on a long journey. That means she draws every day. That means for her, life isn't real until it's been drawn. And perhaps that's the truth. Perhaps life is only real when you've observed it carefully, when you've captured it in lines and shadow. She drinks water from a glass bottle.
That's a sign of environmental consciousness. That's a sign she loves the world. People who draw, they see the world differently. They need it.
They can't live in a world of plastic and waste. That's why artists are so often activists, because love of beauty is impossible when everything around you is ugly. She sees that I'm watching and she smiles, a brief, nervous smile. I don't ask questions, I just show her that I understand. That's enough. Artists don't need dialogue, they just need presence. They just need you to sit there and respect that something great is happening in this moment. Outside, the landscape flies past. Green meadows, little houses with red roofs, rivers gleaming like silver. Switzerland in spring is a postcard, but it's also real. Nature has an oversupply of beauty here. And this woman, she's absorbing it all. Her brain is storing every curve, every shadow, every light. Not storing them as photographs, storing them as feelings, as frequencies, as music that only the hand can translate into lines. Her head is tilted now, concentrated. The pencil moves faster. She's coming to the end of something, the end of a detail, or the end of the whole drawing, I'm not sure. But I see something shift in her. The energy changes, the intensity sharpens. There's a rhythm in the way she works, not even, but pulsing. Fast, slow, fast, pause. That's not something learned. That's inherent. That's like breathing. That's like the pulse of someone who's completely engaged. Between the pages of her book, I see small notes, words she's written. Probably thoughts, descriptions, details she might need later. The artist doesn't work only with her hands. The artist works with her whole self. Eyes, ears, feelings, intellect. This woman is a total artist. She's not here just to pass the time. She's here to gather life, to capture truth, to make the invisible visible. And that's exactly why trains are so important for artists. On a train, everything is in motion, everything is in transit, everything is change. And artists need change the way fish need water. Shall we sleep a bit, do you think?
The train will carry you all the way to Lucerne, and your hand will be rested, and tomorrow you'll draw new windows, new landscapes, new truths that you'll capture in pencil and paper. The world needs what you do. Beauty needs witnesses.
The train rolled gently on, and outside now, the world was completely dark. Just a few lights in the distance, solitary windows where other people too were settling to rest. I thought about how many people in that moment all over the world were falling asleep, each in their bed, in their compartment, in their room, and how we were all part of a great, quiet movement, a movement into sleep. The rhythm of the wheels on the rails, ta-dum, 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 was like the breathing of some great, friendly creature carrying us all together through the darkness, through time. The case at his feet isn't just any case. It's the most important thing on earth, and you can see it in the way he treats it. On the run from Vienna to Graz on this spring evening, a man sits beside a violin case, and the man and the case, they're one. His hands are large and nervous. They shift about on his legs, and sometimes they reach for the case and then let go again. That's the sign of a perfectionist. That's the sign of someone who knows a single wrong note can ruin the whole evening. The control is so completely internalized that nervousness shows only in the fingertips. If you're not watching closely, you'd think he's calm, but the hands always give you away. He's wearing a dark suit, not new, but well kept. The waistcoat is silk, and it looks like it brings luck. Perhaps he wears the waistcoat at every concert. Perhaps it's his ritual. People who make music, they believe in rituals. They believe small things matter, that the right shoes, the right watch, the right waistcoat can make a difference. And perhaps that's not superstition. Perhaps it's psychology. Perhaps it's truth. His face is concentrated in a way I can't quite describe. It's not stress, it's something underneath that.
It's like a man talking to the unconscious, listening to frequencies other people can't hear. His gaze is turned inward. His ears are probably hearing music all the time, even now on this train, even now in the silence. The music is always there for him. It's not something he plays, it's something that plays through him. The train rushes and his shoulders relax for a second. Music loves movement. The rhythm of the train is probably soothing for him. It's like a bass note underneath everything, carrying the whole journey. I watch him absorb that rhythm, pull it into his blood. That's a musician. That's someone who breathes rhythm like air. An older passenger moves to another compartment, but he doesn't seem to notice at all because the man doesn't even register the presence of other people. He's completely alone, even when surrounded. I wonder what he'll play this evening. Probably something classical, Bach or Brahms or Shostakovich. Something that's hundreds of years old, and now he'll play it for a new century. Every concert is a resurrection. Every concert is a new birth of something old. That's the mystery of classical music, that it never grows old, because every time you play it, it's new. The violinist sits in this moment between Vienna and Graz, and he carries whole universes with him. He carries decades of training. He carries thousands of hours of practice. He carries the entire historical weight of Bach on his shoulders. A woman with a child passes by in the train, and the child looks at him. The child probably senses something special, not in the way he looks, but in the way he sits, the way he breathes, the way he's with himself. Children are experts at recognizing people who are different. The violinist doesn't look at the child, but I see his lips move slightly, an invisible smile, an invisible acknowledgement. That's the violinist still being human, even though music takes up so much space in his head. His fingers move sometimes of their own accord, not trembling, but practicing. The position of the fingers, the exact distance between one finger and another, that decides tone and quality. So he's training all the time. His hands are always playing, even when the violin isn't there. The music lives in the bones. The music lives in the nerves. The music lives in the way a person moves through space. I see his face in profile, and I see that he's old. Not old the way time makes you, but old the way music does. Real musicians age differently. They age like wine. They grow deeper, more complex, richer. The lines in his face, they're not signs of decay. They're signs of living. They're signs of all the music he's played, all the feelings he's channeled through his body. His violin case is black and old and has stickers from many countries, just like his traveling bags. That means this man has traveled everywhere in the world to play. That means music has given him his life. That means he's made sacrifices. But he sits there and looks as though he regrets none of them. That's the sign of a man who's lived his life properly. That's proof that it's not always about happiness and success. Sometimes it's about truth. Sometimes it's about serving the truth. He looks out the window now. It's the first time I've seen him turn his whole attention from the inner sound to the outer picture. The landscape flies past, still spring, still green, and full of hope. I wonder if nature helps him, or if it doesn't matter. I think it helps.
Artists need nature because nature is also an art. Nature is also music. You just have to listen. The trees at the window sway in the wind, and I see his head follow the rhythm. Unconsciously, automatically, his body is an instrument, and the rhythm is the language his body speaks. Perhaps this wind music will come into his concert this evening. Perhaps he'll work into Bach or Brahms in some subtle way, what he sees and hears right now. That's how artists work. Everything is raw material, everything is input. The world gives them material, and they transform it into beauty. The train, the landscape, the other passengers, his nervousness, his preparation, everything becomes part of what he'll play this evening.
Suddenly, he reaches for the case and checks it's still there. Not because he's afraid it's gone, he's sitting right on top of it, but because fear is part of the process. Fear isn't the enemy. Fear is proof that something important is happening. Without the fear, the concert wouldn't matter. So he embraces it, he accepts it, he lets it be part of the performance. I ask him very quietly if he's nervous. He looks up, and for a second I'm invisible to him. He hasn't quite arrived on this world yet. He's still in the music, in the notes, in the concert that will happen in a few hours. Then he says, "No, not nervous. Prepared." That's the answer of a professional. That's someone who's transformed fear into preparation. That's the whole point of the journey. When fear becomes structure, when doubt becomes knowledge, when uncertainty becomes certainty. His eyes close now, not to sleep. His body is far too full of adrenaline for sleep. His eyes close to listen. The inner sound grows louder. All attention turns inward. This is the moment before the concert, when the music comes to life and the man behind it almost disappears. This is the mystery and the beauty of real art.
Play beautifully this evening, Master. The people in Graz need your music. The world needs your music. You're just a vessel, and the music flows through you, and that's enough. That's all. That's all that ever was needed. I closed my eyes. Just for a moment, I thought. Just for a moment. But then images came behind my eyelids. Not clear pictures, just colors. Soft colors, blue and gray and a little gold from the lamp in the compartment. And these colors mixed into something that was no longer quite sight and not yet dream. The train moved on. Ta-dum, ta-dum. And each ta-dum was a bit further away, as though the train wasn't quite in the same space as me anymore. As though I'd already half gone, half into that land where tiredness lives, where everything becomes simple. Out there, suddenly you're caught by the movement. The cornfields, endless and golden in the early evening light, begin to dance. Not wildly, but with a gentle, flowing grace that you watch from the window as the train carries you steadily forward. The stalks sway back and forth, a silent orchestra without a conductor, and you notice how your breath matches this rhythm. It's the way the light falls into the movement, gold and silver mixed together, that fascinates you. The wind comes from somewhere far away. You can't hear it, but you see its work everywhere. Waves roll through the fields like water over a lake, one wave after another, organic and endless. You wonder how long this wind has been blowing, whether it started this morning or has been going on for days. Nature makes no sounds you can hear from here in the train, but it tells you everything you need to know just through its quiet movement. The train rolls on, and the fields stretch in every direction you can see. You notice the fine differences in the shades of color. One part is lighter, almost white, another part darker, more intensely golden. That comes from the light itself, you understand, from the way the sun stands in the sky at this moment. There's something timeless about watching these fields. The scene before you could easily be 100 years old or just born. The movement is hypnotic. You feel your eyelids growing heavier, not from tiredness, but from a kind of peace these waves create in you. It's like an old lullaby your body still knows, even if your mind has forgotten the words. The stalks bend before the wind like heads bowing, and then they straighten again and again, a ritual without end. Suddenly you see a field that's different. It's younger, greener, not quite as far along in its ripeness. It stands beside the golden fields like a different voice in a choir, and the wind treats it differently too. The green stalks sway faster, almost nervously, as though the young ones put up more resistance to the force of the air. This variation fascinates you. Nature isn't uniform. Everywhere there are differences, nuances, small rebellions against the monotonous. A field isn't simply a field.
It's a gathering of thousands of individual details that come together to make a whole that renews itself with every breath of wind. You think about the people who planted these fields, those who work here day after day and know the wind like an old friend. They know what this wind means, whether it's good for the harvest, whether it brings rain or drought. You, though, just sit here passing through, an observer for a few fleeting minutes. This fleetingness somehow makes the scene even more beautiful, even more intense. The stalks themselves are like fine fibers you try to make out, but at this distance and in this light, they blur into something liquid. Yet you know that each single fiber lives, has its own small story, from germination in spring to this moment of ripeness. The wind is not just a physical force, it's also a carrier of time, a mediator between past and future. The fields sway in the wind like old dancers performing a dance they've performed 1,000 times, and yet it seems new every time. The silence is striking, despite the constant movement. There's a contrast there. Everything is in motion, and yet everything is still. You wonder if that's what peace is. Not the absence of movement, but the acceptance of it. The harmony between what changes and what remains. The cornfields seem to teach you that, gently and without words. They accept the wind, accept the sun, accept the season, and through this they gain a kind of wisdom that modern people often overlook far too quickly. Fine dust dances in the evening light, and you realize the wind is really stronger than you first thought. It takes small particles with it, small pieces of the fields themselves, and carries them away from the train, away from everything. It's a gentle theft, a quiet plundering of the earth, but also part of how nature moves and renews itself. Nothing stays still, everything must move. These grains dancing in the air now could be thousands of kilometers away tomorrow, could fall into other fields and take root there. The wind is a great wanderer, and everything it touches becomes part of this great journey. The perspective from the train is strange. You remain in constant motion whilst the world outside moves itself. There's a moment of alignment, a moment when both movements merge into one, and you find yourself right in that harmony. Then the fields slip behind you again, and new ones come into view, endless, endless. The colors begin to change, not dramatically, but very subtly. The light grows warmer, more orange, as though the sun draws closer to the horizon. The shadows of the stalks grow longer, and suddenly you see stripes in the fields, dark and light lines that cross and interweave. These lines, you understand, are the traces of the wind itself, frozen for a moment in this play of light and shadow. There's a striking difference between what your ear hears, almost nothing, just the gentle hum of the train, and what your eyes see, a raging dance of nature. The wind is like a silent film, soundless and yet full of force and movement. You almost wish you could hear the sound with it, the rustling of the stalks, the whistling of the wind. But at the same time, this silence is also a blessing. It forces you to see deeper, to look beyond the surface, into the layers of movement and color that would otherwise be buried under sound. Time seems to stretch whilst you watch. Seconds become minutes, minutes become an eternal present. It's the train pulling you forward, not your impatience. And so you have time, precious time, to really see. The fields stretch out, boundless, and you with them, as though your consciousness expands into this vastness too. The boundaries between you and the scene before you grow increasingly blurred until you're no longer sure where the observation ends and where you yourself begin. The deep colors of the earth itself slowly become visible where the fields have thinned or opened up. The brown earth, rich and full of history, shimmers dark under the evening light. You understand that the fields don't simply rest on this earth, but are an integral part of it, that the boundary between stalk and earth is blurred, sometimes invisible. The stalks draw their strength from this dark depth, and the wind brings this strength to the surface where you can see it. It's like making the invisible visible, a revealing of the secrets that lie beneath the surface. You wonder if the wind ever grows tired, if it ever wants to stand still, the way people sometimes long for silence. But the wind never seems to tire. It just keeps blowing, constantly, relentless in its persistence. The fields accept this. They don't resist. They simply dance along. And perhaps that's the secret of life, not fighting what comes, but a gentle dance with it. Your eyelids are really heavy now. The endless repetition of waves in the fields pulls you down, ever deeper into a peaceful meditation. It's as though the wind brushes over your consciousness too, lightly and warmly, and your mind grows increasingly ready to surrender to this movement. The stalks still sway, grow larger, and blur at the same time before your eyes. The fields stretch out, never really ending, just fade away into the vastness of the horizon. And you're part of this vastness now, floating between the movement of the train and the movement of the wind. Your breathing has grown shallow, your thoughts flow like water, and the golden stalks sway, 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 still, as you drift on.
Above a wide, slow canal whose water is dark green and still as a mirror without edges, the dragonflies dance. Hundreds of them, or perhaps just a handful, moving so fast that they become 100. You can't say. The train slows and you lean towards the window to see this dance better, this divine play performed just for a moment before your eyes. The dragonflies are tiny, but their movements are grand. They seem to be everywhere at once, a flash of red here, a gleam of blue there. It's hard to follow, impossible really to track them with your eyes as they move so fast. But you try anyway, and the more you try, the more you lose track. It's better not to follow them, just to see the whole scene, the mass of movement, the pattern that develops and dissolves without you being able to grasp it. It's like seeing a melody, a rhythm, without there being any music. The canal below is perfectly still, so still it seems unreal. No waves, no current, just the reflection of the sky. And in this still water, the dragonflies play their invisible game. They seem to hunt fish, or hunt each other, or simply enjoy the joy of movement. There's an elegance in their movements, an intentionality that seizes your heart. Each turn, each quick change of direction, it's as though something far older than man were performing a dance millions of years old. You notice that the canal itself is sleeping. There's no movement except the dragonflies. The trees around it are still, the air is still, and yet this place is full of life, full of activity, if you just look properly. The silence isn't empty. It's full of moments, full of invisible dramas. A dragonfly is faster than any other animal on Earth, and here, in this moment, you witness its speed, its fearlessness, its pure love of life. There's a mathematical beauty in their movements if you look carefully. The paths they fly aren't random. They follow lines and patterns that recur, that unfold like a geometry of life itself. The circle, the spiral, the quick turn, each shape is perfectly calculated, not with the mind, but with the instinctive knowledge that their kind has developed over millions of years. You can see this beauty if your eye is awake enough, if your mind is quiet enough not to tear it apart with over-analysis. Simply look. Simply allow the patterns to flow through your brain like water through a stream. The colors of the dragonflies are surprising. You expect green or brown, but instead you see shimmering blues, deep reds, metallic green gleaming like polished copper. Each dragonfly is a jewel, a tiny jewel, breaking and recreating light. They're like little fleeting rainbows that can move at will. There's something magical about them, something that blurs the boundary between the living and the inanimate, the gleaming and the vivid. You wonder how long these dragonflies have been here, how many millennia this dance has repeated itself. Dragonflies were on Earth before dinosaurs, before there were humans. They were here, flying over such canals, caught in such dramas, long before this land was settled. And they'll still be here,
after you, after the train, after everything humans have built. It's a humbling thought, and at the same time comforting. You're tiny, but you're allowed to witness this eternal beauty. You're a breath in the existence of these creatures, a brief moment in an infinite dance. The train moves again, very slowly, and suddenly you realize you've already come quite a distance. The dragonflies are behind you, but you can still see them, still dancing, still playing, as though your absence is completely irrelevant to them. That's comforting somehow. The world rolls on, with or without your audience. The dragonflies will dance their dance whether you're watching or not, whether you'll sleep or not. Everything has its own life, its own mission. There's no frustration in these dancers, no fear of failure. They simply do what dragonflies have done for millions of years. They hunt, they play, they skim, they fly, without asking questions. This innocent surrender to the moment is something humans have lost. You remember that your child was like that everything was play, that joy wasn't complicated by overthinking. The dragonflies retain this innocence, this pure presence. To watch them play is almost like remembering what you once were before the world taught you to worry and control. You close your eyes for a moment and try to imagine what it means to fly so fast, to maneuver with such precision. Dragonfly eyes have hundreds of lenses, and they can see almost everything at once. They're aware of a million tiny details, while your brain registers only one blurry impression. For them, the world is almost overwhelming in its detail, and yet they navigate through it with a lightness you'll never achieve. When you open your eyes again, they're still there, still playing, as though they don't need to be perceived to exist. They play because they must play, because the play itself is the goal, not a means to an end. And in this insight lies a deep teaching. The present moment is the goal. Now is all there is. The water of the canal begins to change if you look closely. There are hairline waves where the dragonflies fly around it, where they may have dipped into it, or where the water simply responds to their nearness. The canal isn't as dead as you first thought. It's alive with them. It's as though the water itself were breathing with the dragonflies, as though the entire scene were pulsing with a heartbeat that only the dragonflies can hear. You wonder what lives beneath this glassy surface. Fish, perhaps, frogs, water plants, a whole universe of creatures and structure. And the dragonflies are the ambassadors of these lower worlds, their bridges to the air, to the sun, to human perception. They connect the darkness below with the light above, and you're grateful for them again, for their small, vibrant presence. There are moments when a dragonfly flies right over the surface of the water, so close that it seems to touch the surface. It's a dangerous nearness, as though the flyer is testing the depths, a final proof of its speed and control. Each time it seems impossible that it won't strike itself, that it won't crash in that second. But it doesn't. The dragonfly pulls up, always in the last moment, always with that superhuman precision. The air itself seems filled with them, a field of movement and intention. Each dragonfly is like a thought, quick and uncontrollable, flashing and disappearing again. Together they form a stream of thought, a stream of consciousness unfolding over the water. It's as though nature itself were thinking, here and now, and you're allowed to enter these thoughts. "What are you thinking?" nature asks. "What do you see?" And you answer with your attention, with your wonder, with your love for this small, fragile, wonderful creation. Your eyelids grow heavy, not from monotony, but from its opposite, constant stimulation, constant surprise. Your brain can no longer process this speed. The dragonflies become streaks, colors, an abstract rhythm without form. They're everywhere and nowhere. They're still and wildly moving. They're single and a million. Your consciousness drifts into this dance, becomes part of it, becomes itself a dragonfly, flying and dodging and hunting and living in this moment of eternal movement. The canal hovers below you, dark depths, and perfect silence. The dragonflies still play, but you can barely see them now. It's grown dark, or your eyes have closed. Yes, they've closed. And in the darkness behind your eyelids, the dragonflies still dance, faster and faster, more and more beautiful, until they dissolve into light, into pure movement, into pure existence.
The poplars stand in perfect lines, rows stretching into the distance like the stripes of a prison rose. But it's no prison. It's an order, a human-made order that divides the landscape into sections. And these poplars, tall and slender, cast long shadows over the fields, shadows that move with the sun, that transform as the train carries you forward. You're fascinated by these shadows, by this strict geometry of light and darkness. The afternoon is warm, and the sun no longer hangs high in the sky. The shadows are long, so long they cross their own trees many times, fill the fields many times, slide over paths and ditches. It's as though the poplars have created their own doubles, dark twins walking parallel to them over the land. The shadows are sharper than at midday, more defined, darker against the yellow grass. There's a harshness in this contrast, a clarity that tells you the day is approaching its end. You count the poplars as you pass them, 1, 2, 3, but soon you lose track. There are too many, and they become a rhythm, a drum giving your train a beat. The wood doesn't grow denser, it simply becomes a regular sequence, a visual music. Each tree is the same, each shadow the same, and yet there are differences. One poplar is broader, one is more tilted, one has branches growing differently. But these differences are subtle, tiny compared to the uniformity of the whole. The shadows run parallel to the track, and for long moments it seems as though the train and the shadows are moving at the same speed, as though the shadow of the train were merely an extension of the train itself. It's an optical illusion, you understand, but still it's magical. Train and shadow are one, moving together through this flat landscape, as though the train were dragging its own companion, its dark twin, imitating everything the train does. There's a mathematical precision to this scene that astounds you. The poplars are planted at exact intervals, about 7 or 8 meters apart as you estimate. The shadows fall in perfect patterns, in straight lines, each identical to the one before. This precision is artificial, of course, the result of human planning and control. But in this precision lies also a kind of beauty. Not the wild beauty of nature, but a calculated beauty, a beauty of plan and intention. It's like the beauty of a mathematical proof, a perfect equation, and you can appreciate this beauty and reject it at the same time. The fields between the poplar rows are cultivated, orderly, a patchwork of culture and control. There's a sense of intention here, of human hand forcing nature into a particular shape. The poplars aren't here because they naturally belong here. They're here because humans planted them in rows to protect the fields or to harvest wood, or simply because it looks right. And the order they create affects everything. The way light falls, the way wind blows, the way you see the world. There are moments when the shadows grow so dark they're almost black, almost like holes in the landscape. When you look into one of these shadows, you can see nothing for a moment, just darkness. Then light emerges again, a strip of light between darkness, and perception splits. It's never simply light or dark. It's always a play between them, an eternal back and forth. And in this play, you find a kind of rhythm, a heartbeat that seems to quicken your own heart. You like this control, this order, more than you expected. There's something soothing in the predictability of this scene, in the fact that you can know what's coming. A poplar, a shadow, light again, another poplar. Like a lullaby made of light and darkness, of order and repetition. And in a world that's chaotic and unpredictable, this little corner of order is a gift. It allows your mind to relax because it knows there's nothing to fear, that everything will be exactly as expected. The wind has an effect on the poplars. Their long, narrow leaves whisper, shiver, create a sound like distant rustling.
The shadows waver accordingly, become unstable, dance a little. It's as though the sun itself were shimmering through the leaves, as though the light itself were breathing. And when the sun shines through the leaves, new shadows are created, finer, softer shadows that look like spikes, that look like leaf patterns. The order is broken, becomes chaotic for a moment, becomes orderly again. In this moment, you realize that the poplars, although planted in this strict order, are still wild. They can't be fully controlled, even when humans place them in rows. The wind moves them, the sun entices them into new growth patterns. Birds nest in their branches, insects dig into their bark. Nature always resists control, always breaks through artificial boundaries.
And you wonder who wins in this battle. Humans with their plans and their order, or nature with its persistence and adaptability. Perhaps it's also a dance between them, a quiet back and forth that's been playing out for millennia and will continue long after you're gone. There's a truth in this order, a truth that tells you humans need to arrange the world in rows, in lines, in patterns. It's as though without this order, the world is too big, too wild, too hard to understand. The poplars are like numbers in an equation, like letters on a page. They give the world structure, a scaffold your mind can hang on to. But they're also prisons, also restrictions. And in this moment, you see both truths at once. The order is necessary and also suffocating. The colors of the shadows aren't simply black. There are colors in them, blue from the sky being reflected, green from the leaves filtering light, red and orange from the sinking sun. The shadows are colorful if you look closely, a rainbow of nuances constantly changing. It's as though each shadow were a universe, a small, dark place full of hidden colors. And these colors tell you that shadows aren't empty, aren't meaningless. They're full of information, full of life. As you watch the poplars, you realize they aren't individual creatures. They're a forest, an entity made up of 100 or 1,000 individual elements, but functioning as a whole. Each poplar carries part of the load, shares every storm wind, responds to every ray of sun. They're connected, not physically, but through their closeness, through their similarity, through their shared destiny. And you realize humans function the same way. We believe we're individual, that we're separate beings, but perhaps we're also just parts of a larger whole, planted in rows, dancing together to a rhythm we don't fully understand. Your eyelids grow heavy from this sequence, this rhythm of poplars, this back and forth between light and shadow. It's like a hypnotic sequence, a repeating pattern that puts your mind into a sleep-like state. The poplars march past like soldiers in an endless parade, and you're a quiet audience that must watch, that wants to watch. The shadows fall over your face, cold for a moment, then warm again when the light returns. Cold and warm, dark and light, day and night. And in this exchange you find a peace, a state in which your mind stops struggling and simply flows. The poplar rows become abstract lines, graphic elements in your field of vision. The shadows dissolve, become stripes, become nothing. And you float between them, suspended in this state between waking and sleeping, between order and chaos, between the world of humans and the world of nature. The warmth of the sun on your eyelids, the coolness of the shadows, they soothe you, gently rock you into a sleep deeper than any order, any pattern, any line. The hay bales lie scattered over the field like enormous, dark brown mushrooms that grew overnight. They're round, massive, cylinders of pressed hay, and they give the landscape before you a new dimension, a new meaning. The farmers have just harvested these fields. The hay bales are the result, that golden brown treasure, feed for the animals during the long winters. You look at these hay bales and you see in them the work of humans, the harnessing of nature, the preparation for the future. There's nothing arbitrary about the arrangement of these hay bales, and yet it looks chaotic. They're not arranged in straight lines like the poplars from earlier. They lie in the field in what seems like a random distribution,
One hay bale here, then two, then one alone, then a group of three. But you understand that this arrangement isn't random. It's the result of mechanical processes, of mowing and baling, of the logistics of machines. And yet there's something poetic about this apparent chaos, about this distribution that looks like the work of some wild artist using the landscape as canvas. You see down there a tractor that's just picking up another hay bale. Its tiny silhouette is minuscule against the size of the field, but its path through the bales is precise, purposeful. The farmer knows this landscape, knows where each bale lies, could find them in the dark if needed. And you realize that these people who work these fields daily have a relationship with these hay bales that you'll never have. They know how much labor is in each bale, how much sweat, how much skill. And they don't just see the beauty, they also see the effort, the burden, the everyday reality behind it. The color of the hay bales is beautiful, a warm, dark brown, almost golden at the edges where the sun shines on them. They're not gray or dull as you might have expected. They're full of color, full of life. And in this moment, you realize that hay isn't dead. It's dried grass, yes, but it's still full of nutrients, still full of energy that will later benefit the cattle and sheep. These hay bales aren't the end of a process. They're a transition, a midpoint between the living grass of summer and the hungry animals of winter. The train slows, and you can see the details of the hay bales better. The surface is rough, with individual stalks protruding, sticking out from the compressed hole. These stalks are like little rebels resisting the compression, wanting to preserve their individuality. And you like them for it, these small, wild pieces that disturb the picture of complete submission. They remind you that even in the most controlled situations, wildness remains, freedom survives. There's a rhythm to this scene that soothes you. The hay bales are scattered across a field that extends a great distance. They're anchor points in this plane, reference points your eye seeks to hold on to as the train passes. Hay bale, field, sky. A simple composition, but an effective one. There's a fundamental simplicity to this scene that calms your mind, forces you not to think, but simply to see. The wind moves over the hay bales, but has barely any effect on them. They're too heavy, too firm to be moved by the wind. But the grass around them, the shorter hay and the wild herbs, they're full of movement, whisper and dance as though the field itself were breathing. And the hay bales are like breaths, like pauses in this breathing, like places where the air must hold still. The scene pulses with this duality, movement and stillness, chaos and order, nature and human control. The hay bales also create a new topography in the landscape. Where it was once flat, there are now elevations, small hills of pressed grass. This change isn't dramatic, but it's real. The human hand has reshaped the landscape, remodeled it according to needs and plans. And when you think about it, you realize this is the case everywhere. Humans continuously change the landscape, shape it, use it, transform it. The hay bales are just the latest manifestation of this old drive to arrange and utilize the world according to our will. You wonder how long these hay bales will lie here, days, weeks? And then they'll be collected, transported somewhere, to a barn, to a warehouse, to the mouths of waiting animals. They won't lie here forever. And that's the essence of farm life, this eternal cycle of production and consumption, of preparation and use. Everything is time-limited. Everything has its place and its time. The hay bales will have their days, and then they'll be gone, and other hay bales will come, and the cycle will repeat, year after year, decade after decade. The structure of the hay bales is impressive if you look closely. The hay is wrapped in a net structure that holds it together, that prevents it from coming apart on the journey. This net structure is a marvel of practical geometry, of efficiency.
Each knot is precisely positioned. Each layer of net serves a purpose. It's like architecture, like engineering, translated into nature.
And you realize that humans don't simply control nature. Humans work with nature, use its laws, its structure, to create something useful. The smell of hay even reaches here into the train, a dry, warm scent that's sweet and at the same time hearty. It smells of summer, of meadows, of sunshine. It smells of life that's been harvested and preserved. The smell tells you a story of growth, of harvest, of provision. And this smell, this simple smell of hay, tells you more about the reality of this field than 1,000 words could. Your mind opens, receives this scent like a gift, and the boundaries between you and this landscape grow unclear. The light falls on the hay bales in a way that emphasizes their form. The roundness, the massiveness is undeniable. And in this moment, you realize that the hay bales are beautiful. Not beautiful in the subtle way the dragonflies were beautiful, or the way the poplar shadows were beautiful, but beautiful in a robust, practical way. They're beautiful because they work, because they serve a purpose, because they ensure the continuity of life. Beauty isn't only aesthetic, it's also practical, functional, truthful. Your mind wanders to the animals that will eat these hay bales in winter. Cows, sheep, horses, they'll live on them during the cold months, will draw their energy from them. These hay bales aren't just objects in a landscape. They're promises, guarantees that life will go on, that the animals will be cared for, that the cycle will repeat. And perhaps, you think, that's the fundamental human effort, to create security for yourself and for others, to lay by stores, to prepare for the future. The hay bales are this human hope, condensed and compressed into practical bales, tangible and real. Your eyes are very tired now, and the hay bales begin to blur, become abstract forms, browns and yellows and darks. They seem to move even though they're still, and you wonder if you're dreaming. The landscape flows past you, but you remain focused on the hay bales, pulling them with you as the train passes. They're anchor points, anchors in this rushing journey, and your consciousness holds on to them, grows slower, grows tired, grows weaker. The hay bales are everywhere now, everywhere in your field of vision, even though they're already behind you. They're in your thoughts, in your dreams, part of the inner landscape building up in your mind. And you wonder what it means to harvest, to gather, to prepare for the future. These hay bales are hope in the form of hay, are planning, are trust in the coming cold. And in this hope, you find your own hope, your own trust, your own sense of understanding and acceptance. The hay bales rock you slowly, gently into sleep, and you surrender without resistance, without questions, into this darkness, into this peace, into this hay-golden dream.
The train rolled gently on, and outside the world was completely dark now. Just a few lights in the distance, solitary windows where other people too were settling to rest. I thought about how many people in that moment, all over the world, were falling asleep, each in their bed, in their compartment, in their room, and how we were all part of a great, quiet movement, a movement into sleep. The rhythm of the wheels on the rails, ta-dum, 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 was like the breathing of some great, friendly creature carrying us all together through the darkness, through time. I met the organ builder on a train through Upper Swabia, on a small line between Ulm and Friedrichshafen, which runs through gentle hills and baroque churches, each more beautiful than the last, white and golden, with onion domes rising into the grey autumn sky like exclamation marks. It was a quiet day. Mist lay in the valleys, and the train moved so slowly, as though it too wasn't in a hurry and would rather contemplate the landscape than arrive. He was a man approaching 80, lean and upright, with hands that were long and bony, and moved when he spoke as though pressing invisible keys.
His face was narrow, with high cheekbones and deep-set eyes that had an unusual color, a bright, warm brown, almost amber, which seemed to absorb light and release it again. He wore a dark suit, old-fashioned and careful, and on his waistcoat hung a chain, but not a watch, rather a small brass tuning pipe. I noticed the tuning pipe and asked if he was a musician. He shook his head slowly, thoughtfully, and said, "Not a musician, an organ builder. I don't build music. I build the instrument that makes music possible. That's a difference, a real one. The musician plays. I create the voice that's played with." 55 years, he told me. 55 years I've built organs. In churches, in concert halls, sometimes in private houses, but most of all, in the little village churches here in Upper Swabia, where the organ is still the heart of the community, where it's played every Sunday, at baptisms and weddings and funerals, and on quiet evenings when the organist practices alone, and no one listens except God and the mice. He explained to me how an organ is constructed. Imagine, he said, a house full of pipes, hundreds, sometimes thousands, from tin and lead and wood, each different, each unique. The smallest as tiny as a pencil, the largest as tall as a house, and each has its own voice. The metal pipes sound bright and clear, like silver, like bells, like cold water over stone. The wooden pipes sound warm and dark, like a fire in winter, like a voice that comes from deep within. And together they are an orchestra that a single person can play, with 10 fingers and 2 feet. That's the miracle of the organ, that one person alone can create a sound that fills a church, that gets under your skin, that makes your bones vibrate. The hardest part, he said, is the tuning. Each pipe must have exactly the right note, not roughly, exactly. And that's not just a matter of mechanics, it's a matter of the ear, of the heart. I stand in the church, alone, and listen to one pipe, and then the next, and then both together, and I hear whether they're speaking to each other or past each other, whether they understand or argue, whether the sound floats or tips. These are nuances so fine that no measuring device can capture them. Only the ear of someone who's listened for 55 years. He told me of a moment he's never forgotten. I restored an organ, he said, in a small church in the Allgäu. An old organ, 18th century, that had been silent for years because nobody cared for it. I needed months. New pipes, new bellows, new mechanics. And then, on a November evening, it was ready. I sat at the keyboard, quite alone in the cold church, and pressed the first key. And the note that came filled the whole space. It rose from the pipes like a bird flying. It spread beneath the vault. It touched every stone, every window, every bench. And I sat there and wept. Not from sadness, from, I don't know, from gratitude perhaps, that I was the person allowed to return this voice, its voice. I asked him what organ building had taught him, and he touched his tuning pipe and said,
Every pipe has its voice. That's what I've learned. Not every pipe sounds the same, and that's as it should be. Some are high and bright, some deep and dark. Some are loud, some quiet. Some sound sad, some cheerful. But each is important. Each has its place in the whole. And if one is missing, you hear it. And it's the same with people. Everyone has their own voice, their own sound, their own register. And the world is an organ, and we are the pipes. And when we sound together, when we listen to each other and tune our voices, then something emerges that's greater than all of us. Something that can fill a church, or a night, or a whole life. He stepped out at a halt beside a Baroque church whose onion dome vanished in the mist. He buttoned his coat and walked toward the church, slowly and upright, as though going to an old friend. And perhaps he was. Perhaps an organ was waiting for him, wanting to be tuned. Every pipe has its voice. I think of that when I wonder whether my voice matters. Then I remember the tiny pipe, as small as a pencil, which must not be missing from the concert. The train travels on, and the rattle sounds like a deep organ pipe, a hum that comes through the floor and through the body and through the soul. And my eyes grow heavy, and the sound grows softer and fuller, and I sink deeper into the music of the night, which nobody plays, and yet is there, everywhere, in everything.